Welcome back. So in the last lecture we populated the correct years and the correct months for the given year within our start and end date range. And in this lecture we're going to populate the correct days for any given month. But before we go ahead, let's just do a little cleaning up again. So in app.js, we don't need all these commented out code. We have reused all of it, so we can just safely delete it. And we also got a few console logs being triggered. One of them is here in the when the Datepicker is created. And then I think we're also console logging the one of these iteration dates here. Right, let's remove that. And now we're can start with a clean console. Now this also, if you observe, we do some repetition here. So we're creating an options HTML element, manipulating it, giving it different values and text, and then rendering it to the DOM. So we're doing this for the month, and prior to that we're doing this for the year. So this doesn't really necessitate, but it gives us an opportunity to refactor some of this code and make it more optimal, make it more reusable. And so why don't we just go ahead and do that very quickly. Now, creating an option element and rendering it to the DOM is something that might be needed on the whole application and not just in this Datepicker module. So it's probably should be defined not as a method of the Datepicker class, rather a separate function that we are importing. So let's just create a file for that, and we can call it like utility functions.js. Obviously you can put it in a different folder if you like, but this is a small application, so I'm going to just keep it in the root. And what we can do here is export a function. So this is another way of exporting a function, and we can call it create option element, and this will have to take on two values because we're manipulating two values, two arguments. So it's the value and the text. So let's just call these arguments val and txt, and because we're having more than one argument, we're going to need to put them in parentheses for this ES6 function expression. And here's where we can define our function, and let's just check out what we need to put inside. So in these cases you need to make a decision. So there's two things happening here. First of all, you're creating an option element and then you're appending it. So these are logically two separate actions. So you can decide to only create the option element and return it in that function, and then let the original method render it to the DOM wherever it wants to do it, or you can make it part of the function. For reusability, best is to separate these two functionalities, or just make it optional. So you can always, but let's just go with just for now, just returning the option HTML element. So we can just define it like we did before, but obviously now we don't have access to the I, we have access to the val that we will passing in, and we will make the text equal to txt and simply return the option HTML element. And in this case, what we can do is comment these out. Just feels like these tooltips are always appearing in the wrong place recently in VS Code. Not sure why that happens. So we still need the option constant because we are returning something here, so we need to save it in order to be able to append it. But now we need to call our function. What is it called? It's called create option element. Create option element, and it should be recognized. Yeah, so it's going to get imported automatically. Remember, we need to put the JS here, otherwise the console is going to complain. And we need to pass in the value and the text. So in this case, it's very easy. Remember, it's just I for both. So we can say I and I. And then we let this line of code append it to the DOM. And in the other case, where the months are being created, let's comment all these out again. Save the option here, and we need to pass in for the value. We need to pass in months as 2 digits, and the text has to be the months as full names, right? So let's just see what we have. We have November and December, and we have all the years. Let's change our default to 2000, let's say 20. So we should have all the months of the year, January through to December. And let's check out January in 2021. We should just have 3 months here. So we have all the years and we have 3 months. So it still seems to work. Now, if we want to make this utility function multifunctional, say like optionally also render, we can add another parameter. We can say append to, and its default value will be null. So by default it won't render anything. And what we can do is we can say if append to, then do something else, such as return the option as an object. Now we can go ahead and grab this line of code. We can actually let's just comment it out first and put it in the if leg of this conditional. And now we won't have access to the pick month select, etc. We need to put the append to here, which is basically a query parameter, which we will pass in here. Where is it? First, second, and we're going to pass it in here. So we're just going to grab this string and edit. Now it's not very visible, but you can save them before passing in. You can save them in a shorter constant, and then it's more readable. But in this case, we should be able to render it. So remember, these are the months, so the months should be rendered just as they were before. Even though we are doing it through our newly created function, and the years are just render the same way, even if we change it to 2020. You got all the months. So now you can see at one place we are returning the option element and appending it here. So we're using the else flag, and when it comes to the months, we're actually appending it within the utility function here. Now it's up to you which one you want to use. I'm just going to go for a cleaner solution and get rid of all this original code and make the function a little bit shorter. Let's get this one as well and pass it in here for the years, and then we can get rid of all these. So we saved a bit of code for reuse. It's not much optimization, but it's a nice practice, and if your application is more complex, your elements are more complex, this can save you some headache when you need to modify things. Let me see if it's still working. Seems to be still working. Let's check another date. Let's go to 18 and 11. So it's still working. Right. Let's clear this console. So let's get to actually the point of the whole lesson, which is rendering the dates. So what we want to end up with is something like this view, and let's just create a method very quickly and remind ourselves of the whole application logic, which is basically grabbing the wrong one. So we're got the default year, current year, rendering the years, rendering the months. So now we have to render the days, and then we can start adding actions and functionalities to the different buttons and drop downs. So what we're going to do now is just define a new method on the object, and this method will be called render days. Quite intuitively, it doesn't need any arguments because it will use this current year and month as its input. We don't need, actually we need to call it here, so let's just quickly call it once all the months are ready. And now we can close this method as well. Right, so we will need an array of days for the month. So let's just define an array called month array, initially an empty array. And if you can see here, it's kind of crucial to figure out which is the first weekday of the month. So we need to figure that out, and Moment.js makes it really easy for us to just call a method on a moment object, and it will return an integer, which is basically anywhere from 1 to 7, where 1 being Monday and 7 is Sunday. And it is also a sort of a query or a functionality that probably deserves its own method, because it might be reused later. We won't use it, but if you're building a bigger application. But this one wouldn't really belong to the utility functions. This one is more sort of scoped to the date side of functionalities of the application. So I will make it as part of the Datepicker class. So it will be called first week day of the month. Very explicit, so we remember what it does, and it's a very, very short function that's going to use the moment object. We're creating a new JavaScript date with this current year and month, and all we need to check is the ISO week day. That's what it is. So now let's just call this function here. It's this one, and actually console log it so we can test it out. Oh, that's a bit too much. Right. So we're going to go here, and what it's saying is that in 2018 November, the first day of the month was 4, meaning it must have been a Thursday. So let's just rewind back to, yeah, that's correct. So that was a Thursday. Let's check out something more recent in at least my memory, which is 2020 December. 2020 December, I remember it started on a Tuesday. But if you need proof, then here you go, it started on a Tuesday, so it has to return a value of 2. Here we go. So that works all well. Let's go back here, and instead of console logging it, we're going to save it into a variable that we're going to call first day of month. So we got the first day of the month, and if we look at a real calendar, you can see that depending on when it starts, there are some empty sort of slots in the calendar, which would normally be filled by days of the previous month, like here. So we need to determine, so our month array might have to start with sort of empty slots, and we need to determine how many of these we need, and we're just going to do it with a conventional for loop. So we're saying for let I equals 1. Now why is it 1? Because the ISO days are from 1 to 7. So basically, if it's if the first day of the month falls on a Monday, we don't want this to run at all, because we need to run it up until 1 less than the first day of the month. So if the first day of the month is a Monday, then we start on 1, and we stop before we get to 1. So basically this loop will not run at all and will not render any empty days. So in that sense, this for loop is not as conventional as you might be used to. And what we need to do is simply grab the month array and push in an empty slot. Then, once the empty slots are sorted, why don't we just do another console log here and look at our month array. Why am I not typing when I'm hitting the keyboard? Month array. Right, so which month are we in? As a reminder, we're in 2020-12. So remember that started on a Tuesday. So we should have 1 empty slot in our array. If we go to November started on a, I can just check it here, on a Sunday, so we should have 6 empty slots. Let me save it. and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, that's correct. So this seems to be working nicely. And now we need to get the actual days of the month. Now, how do we figure out how many days are in a month? Moment.js. We're going to create another reusable functionality method. So let's just call it days in current month. Now, if you want to make it like really reusable, then you can call it days in this month and pass in the argument, for example, this current year and month. But for now, I'm just going to go with days in current month, no arguments, and I'm just going to rely on the object's actual property, that this current year and month. And we're going to return again a moment. Well, let's not type. Just grab the whole thing again. And but we need a different functionality. And this functionality is called days in month, right? Let's save it here. Constant days in month equals this days in current month, right? And for a moment we're going to remove that, and we're going to console log something else out. The days in month. Let's see. So November we got 30. Let's change it to 02. I was going to say 29. Remember, 2020 was a leap year, so February returns 29 days. So Moment is really smart. Right. We can add this back because we want to have look inside these arrays a couple of more times. So we're going to actually, let me just again copy this for loop, because now we're gonna loop through the days in month, sort of the numbers. We're gonna start again on 1 because calendar days start with 1, and we're gonna say days in month, but here we can't exclude the last day. So we always want our 31st, we want our 29th, we want our last days, so we have to include it. So we're gonna loop until we're equal to the last day of the month, and we are incrementing by 1, and we're pushing in the I. So basically we're pushing in a number. So where we are now, we're in February. So let's just do a quick check on our calendar and date time zone, time date, whatever it's called. So February starts on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and 29 days long. Yes, 2020 February starts on Saturday, 29 days long. So that's all good. So we just need to go ahead and use this array to populate this calendar. So as a first step in that, we're going to open up this monstrous method and go down to the line. Let's just pop back out to HTML editing mode so we can get access to our commenting signs and hotkeys work properly. So we need to comment out the rows, right? You don't want the rows anymore. So it's just going to grab all these. So we need an empty body. I'm not going to delete it just yet because I want to see the inner structure of the days, because we made great efforts of planning how to build arrays and how to nest the links, etc. And I don't want to lose it. Of course, I could go on GitHub and check out my own code, but I think it's just simpler this way. So JavaScript, always have a GitHub repository, and you might just want to have access to it right then and there. Right, so if I'm correct, we don't have anybody, right? Have I done it correctly? Yes. I mean, the body is there, but there's nothing inside the body. Right, this is exactly what we wanted. And this is the end of our method. And here, we just need to grab our month array and our favorite for each method. And remember, this gives access to each element of the array. We're just going to call it day. You see that this is what I'm talking about. These tooltips are just showing up on the wrong place. But we not just need the day, we also need the index number of the array. So it's also automatically passed in, so we don't need to worry about that. We just need to make it explicit. And then we can continue with our callback function. But when you're passing in more than one, or when you want to access more than one argument, you need to use parentheses. That's how it is in ES6, so let's not forget about that. And now we need to think, because remember, we need to create rows for the weeks, just like here on these calendars. So we need to make sure that each row gets 7 slots, 7 days, 7 array elements, if you like, from the month array. So we need to kind of keep track of when to start a new row and when it's still okay to insert in the same row. And the question is how we're going to do that. And to help solve this problem, this is the month I want to show you as a template. So this month represents how an array is indexed. So you've got 0, the first element, 1, the second element, index 2, the third element, index 3, the fourth element. And if you look closely, you can see that all of the rows start with the multiples of 7. So 0 is a multiple of 7, obviously, 0 times. Then 1 times 7, 2 times 7, 3 times 7, 4 times 7. So all we need to check is if the index, remember these represent the index's values, if the index is divisible by 7, we need to start a new row. It's that simple. So let's just go ahead and implement this logic. So we need an if statement. If index, we're dividing it 7 and checking what the remainder is. And if it is 0, then do something. And what we're going to do is create a new row. So constant new row equals, and the new row will be a string, and we're going to grab this string from this method, and the string is the day row. Starts here, it's here. Let's scroll back down and just edit here, and don't forget we haven't copied the closing text, so we need to close it. So we've got a new row, and we just need to insert it. Document query selector, and the class we need, again we're scrolling back up, this is why I haven't closed it. The class is this one here, but we can't just edit to anybody, because remember there are multiple calendar bodies potentially on the site. So we need to also make sure it's copied into the correct date picker. So we need to also grab the ID Where are we? I'm getting lost. Yep. So I'm gonna grab this ID, and inside that Datepicker, we're going to add it to the body, and remember which method we're using the insert adjacent HTML. We're always going to add it to the end. And what is it we're adding? It's the new row. So let's just do a couple of tests. So in February 2020, let me see how many weeks there were. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, which is quite common to have 5 weeks. Actually, let's inspect this element and check how many weeks we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, from recent memory, I know that November is a special month because it had 6 weeks, you see. We had 2 broken weeks, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So for November, we should have 6 rows, and if we have 6 rows, I'm going to be absolutely happy with how we're progressing here together. Let me just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows. Perfect. So this logic works well, and all that's left to do is grab the last row and add the day in. Why the last? Remember, we're iterating in an array, so these are not ready yet. These rows are not ready yet. So let's say when we're in index 6, we're still just creating the first row. When we're in index 8, 9, that's when we created the second row. So we can always just rely on using the last row. But how do we get the last row? In jQuery, it's very easy. It's a little bit harder in plain JavaScript. So the way we're going to do it is basically collect all the rows we have so far up until wherever we are in this month array iteration, and we're just gonna check the last one and just add it inside that last one. So the way we do it is defining a constant. We say calendar rows, because we're grabbing all of them, and we're going to go with document query selector. Now we can't use query selector all. We can't use the get by class because again there might be other date pickers, so we can't grab all of the rows that could be present on our page. So we have to be specific to this date picker. So I'm going to grab that already. So it's specifically grabbing something in this date picker, and what we're grabbing is the calendar body, date picker, calendar body, days, row, etc. And this is a class, so we make sure we need to put that dot there, right? So what we're getting here is a node list. So let's just console log it here that you can see it. Console log, and it's called calendar. I don't know why these tooltips are so useless. They're covering the most important things that you want to see. It's weird. VS Code hasn't been doing that for too long, but it just started it. So, okay, so we got a node list here. I probably put it in the wrong place. I should have put it outside the array. So you can see you've got a node list, which is an array. So we can simply access the relevant with an array index. So all we need to figure out is how long that array is. So we can say calendar rows count, equal to calendar rows dot length. And now we can grab the last one and use our all too familiar insert adjacent method and insert the date. So let's just go ahead and do that. Calendar rows, which is the array. Let's get the last one. Calendar rows count. Remember it's index, so -1. That's the last one. Insert adjacent HTML. Before end is the parameter where we want it, so just before the closing tag. And what are we adding? For now we're just adding a normal number. And what's our number? It's this one. Remember the array just consists of numbers or empty slots. So this is what we're gonna add in here nicely. Right? I'm removing this because it's very wrong here. Right, and see what we get. Okay, yeah. This is why you don't delete things. This is exactly why you don't delete things. Because you don't know when you need them. Let's just grab one of these date divs. And we're going to have to define it. We say const new day slot, or just new day is equal to a string. For now we don't need the a tag, so why don't we just get rid of it and just put in our day variable here. And now we're not putting in the day because then we're going to get an unformatted list of numbers. So we're going to put in a formatted string which will be parsed as DOM element. Right. Here we go. So we got November. Starts on a Saturday, ends on a Monday. And it's 30 days. Starts on a Sunday. It looks a bit off. We're going to fix that in a moment. But other than that, it looks good. Let's look at another month. For example, February. Here, 2020. Switch our default date. And remember, we need to have 1-2 in the first week, and we need to have Saturday as the last day. 1-2, and yes, Saturday. All right, so let's just go ahead and fix this. We're going to add some flex display mode, and we're going to space them out. So what we need is the class of Datepicker calendar rows, body rows. Makes sense to put it underneath the body between the day units. So let's put it here. And I'm going to say display flex. Again, suggestion is covering the options. I don't understand what's going on with VS Code. And let's just select the right mode. I think it's justify content. It's the space between, although it looks weird on the last line, but this is what it will be. This is what we need. A space between. Let's copy over it here. It looks weird, and it's going to look even weirder if you get a month where there's just a couple of days at the end. Let's select one of those. Let's say March 2020. March 2020. It's gonna look really weird. So you see, this is not correct. And the question is what we can do about it. Well, just like we added some empty slots at the beginning, we can also add some empty slots at the end. Now, when is this a problem at all? We have to think about it. So the problem is that we have a row where it's not full. So we don't have 7 days. We have less than 7 days. And it's not just that, but also the number of slots in the month is not divisible by 7, because this one is divisible by 7 if you don't take this into account, because you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 7, 7, 7, 7. So the array length of these month arrays is always divisible by 7. So in case it is not, we need to come up with some fix. So we're going to go down, actually up, to this section, and we're conditionally going to say that if the month array length is divided by 7 and the remainder is not 0, right? Then do something. So console log not 7, right? We're gonna console log not 7. Now there's I found a perfect month here. So February next year, 2021, is going to be the perfect month. So in a perfect universe, this is how a month would look like. Starts on a Monday. The first is on a Monday, and it's got 4 weeks, and it's got no broken weeks. But unfortunately, the real calendar, our solar system, is broken, if you like. So we need to adjust for that. And so if we put February as the default date, then we should not see that console log. Right? Let's just go here and see if we get that console log. Let's clean up all this. So 21, so this should be okay now. It's still not okay. Something is wrong here. What is wrong here? Length, height. I can never spell these words. Length and height. Man, annoying. Right, there we go. Right, and if we change it to 2020, not 7. Okay, so it's not my coding, it's my English. That's what it is, man. That's what it is. Now, what are we going to do in case this is not 7? We're going to have to figure out how many sort of trailing empty slots we need. So we're going to say constant trailing empty slots. Right, I'm losing my bits here. The trailing empty slots, and how are we going to figure this out? So let's look at the real calendar. So it's not divisible by 7, and it leaves us some remainder. And let's say in April this remainder would be 5. Now, in order to be able to determine how many days are missing, so we need to get this remainder that is 5. So month array divided by 7, I mean the modulus operator 7. So for the April 2021, it's going to give us 5. And what we need to do is just week is 7 days. So just from 7 we need to take this off, and this is how many trailing empty slots we will need. Right? This has to be actually length. Length, correctly spelled length. Right. And then our all too familiar loop. We're going to start with 1 and trailing empty slots, and it has to go up until the actual value. You could have started with 0 and then remove the equal sign. It doesn't really matter. So let's do some console log tests, and let's do for April 2021, although it's 9-hour range, so let's do something else. Let's do January. So you're gonna have to have 4 empty slots at the beginning. There's no empty slots at the end. All right, let's go back to our November. Has a nice example. It's got 6 at the beginning and 6 at the end. Or if we go December, 1 at the beginning and 3 at the end. So let's go with December 2020. Just one character needs to be changed, and let's see what we get. So 1 at the beginning, 3 at the end. Let me see, December 1 at the beginning, 3 at the end. So that's perfect. And this should fix our calendar view as well. So Monday is empty. That's perfect. Let's look at the perfect month, which is 02 and 21. How does it look? Nice. Let's check the next month, which is March. It should have some extra days at the end, but nothing in the beginning. It all looks like it's aligned. 31st is a Wednesday. Yeah, 21. Let's not get confused again. Right, that's a Wednesday. So we able to render now the days for the given month, but obviously the whole calendar is still lacking the interactivity. So we got to a point where, let's just recall where we are now on this logic chart. If we statically pass in a default year and month, we get the correct years, months, and the days, and now we just need to take care of the actions, and this will be sort of in the second part of this tutorial. So I'm gonna probably drink coffee because just made too many trivial errors today, and I've got a whole work day ahead of me, and it's not looking good for me. Not looking good for me. Right, anyway, next time.